we tend to compare our stress and compare it to what the first responders trauma would be, and they're nothing alike.
Hmm.
And that's okay. They're not supposed to be alike.
Yeah.
um Even if two first responders go on a call together, their responses aren't going to be the same. The
Mhm.
way they internalize it is not going to be the same because they have different backgrounds, they have different histories, and they have different exposure to the same thing. I have a friend who is a army wife, and we constantly I talked to her one day and I said, I don't know how you do it. Your husband's on the other side of the world right now. How do you do it? She goes, how do you do it? Your husband runs into a burning building. And I go, yeah, but that's just his job. She goes, that's just my husband's job.
Welcome to the First Responder Families podcast, sponsored by Shadowproof at FHE Health, a nationally recognized behavioral health provider. I am your host, Ivona Bhadha, a director of family services at FHE Health and a family, couples, and trauma therapist. Join me for meaningful conversations and talks that support wellness and mental health of first responders and their families. Welcome back to First Responder Families, the podcast where we talk real life behind the sirens. In today's episode we will talk with a very special person about mentorship and about keeping own identity as a wife of the first responder. So I'm welcoming here Chrissy Walser.
You
Hi.
got it.
Yeah.
Hi.
She's a wife of a fireman for 29 years and the family support coordinator for South Carolina FAST, which is the South Carolina Firefighters Assistance and Support Team. And
Yeah.
she is she's walking alongside other spouses and family members as a peer mentor and advocate, helping change the culture of silence around stress, grief, and family challenges in the first responders field. Hi.
Hi. Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here. I'm
Great.
very excited about this, about sitting here and sharing my experience and just holding space with fellow firewives.
Yes, I love to have you here. Let's just orient our listeners how we met.
We met at a clinicians academy called Mile in Our Boots. It's put on by my by SC Fast. It is where we go with clinicians and we take a 4-day intensive training with the clinicians. And you guys get to don fire gear. You get to go on simulated runs, go into a smokeout building. I know you did that.
I
You ride in the back of an ambulance. You get to do simulated law enforcement calls and even get on the end of a telecommunicators, sit in the seat of a telecommunicator and get some calls. So an
yeah.
amazing experience, and I value everything and love everyone that I've met so far through there.
Mhm. Yeah, it was an unforgettable experience for me as a human being, but also a professional. And I failed my first day on all these jobs, but
No,
that's
you didn't.
I know that's okay. But I got a valuable experience. I think that's the mission of the training, also to really experientially feel what it's like to be a first responder, maybe just even in the training, not even in the real world. And I also really valued your talk, on the impact of first responders' job or public safety job on the families. And we had a lot of conversations since.
Yeah, we have. It's always a little nerve-wracking to get up there and be open and raw, but
Mhm.
I found my passion for helping others and especially those that are first responders. in my talk, I talked about how it started when I was helping a friend who lost her ex-husband. With my husband's department, it was the first line of duty death that they had. And I walked alongside her and saw that there was a little support, but very little support
Mhm.
with the on the spouse side. And I decided then, which happened about 10 years ago, to be the last time that anyone would walk alone in that journey in my department.
Yeah.
And that's what started this.
Yeah, that's amazing, you know. And what about you, 29 years ago? How who was there for you? How did you navigate through the schedules, through the really the experience of being a wife of full-time fireman?
It was challenging. It was difficult. I was lucky that at the station my husband was at, there was a couple of older guys there who had been married a couple times, and one of the wives took me under her wing. I fully believe that had I not had that conversation with her many late nights, I don't know that we would still be married. I think that she showed me to kind of take a step back and realize that this is a very intensive world, that when he comes home angry, it's not necessarily about me, that it is about the stresses that he's seen. And then as I changed careers and got more educated, and I actually got into the education field and started working more and more with children, it was, we were their safe haven,
Mm,
and they could come home and they could let it all out with us. But I had a hard time not internalizing it and going, oh, it's my fault. It's my fault. It wasn't my fault. It was, we were young, we were broke because we don't make a lot of money.
mhm.
And we were both trying to navigate not only the first couple of years of marriage, but the stress that comes along with the job and added responsibilities and all that kind of thing. So I think that had I not had that support, that I don't think that, I wouldn't have made it through it.
So this kind of mentorship is that valuable. It can really save marriages and save sanity for the spouse who feels alone with all those big internalized feelings.
Absolutely. The guys, when they get out of rookie school, they get mentors while they're on shift.
Mhm.
My husband Dave has been had many mentees,
Mhm.
and I think that if they're married, that we should also kind of take their wives under our wings and get to know them. I've gotten to know many of my husband's mentees. I've gotten to know their wives, their children, and we've hung out, and I've, walked with them and tried to help them along the path like someone helped me and pay it forward. So hopefully one day they'll pay it forward.
Yeah. It's like a sense of community, but there is specific community because there is a mutual understanding with the schedules, holidays, that the wives are home alone a lot, and they need community, some sort of village.
Absolutely. They always say that the brotherhood, they talk about the brotherhood of all law enforcement, fire department, EMS, all that. But there's also a sisterhood outside of that with the family support and brotherhoods, because now we have more women who
Mm,
are both of it, and there's husbands and things nowadays. But there is still that sense of community, because if you don't live within the culture, you don't understand the culture.
mm,
I remember one time my husband, holidays are days on a calendar now, and my husband couldn't take off for Christmas. And my mom's like, well, just have someone else work for him. I mean, he puts it in. It works that way, right? And I was like, no, it kind of doesn't work that way. It's, you have, not only do you have to talk about seniority, you have to talk about if the books are
uh-huh.
open, and, and then the guys also, if, at least in my husband's department, if they don't have children, the guys who don't have children, try and let those guys who have children get off. They give them first dibs on those holidays that are important to children, especially Christmas. They try and let them have it, or they'll go in. There was one year where they would have guys who would go in and do 4-hour shifts so that first responder, that firefighter, could go home and
Mm.
spend 4 hours at home with their young children or their family if they had them. And they did that for a couple of years. And my husband always volunteered because to my children, Christmas was any day of the week. We tended to, if he was on duty on Christmas Day, we got up at 4 o'clock in the morning and we opened gifts at 4 o'clock in the morning,
I see.
and they knew no different. We
Mm.
had breakfast, then we drove dad to work because we were in one car, and they had to save their stockings. And
Mhm.
that's one tradition we started. And stockings are huge in my family because when my kids were younger, we drove 35 minutes to his station and then we have to drive 35 minutes back home because we only had the one car. And so stockings were the thing they opened in the car. So 20 years later, they're still the biggest thing that my kids look forward to every year are the stockings. So it's finding new traditions and being okay with recreating traditions and making them your own. And, now that my kids are all grown, I mean, my youngest is married,
Ah.
Christmases, it doesn't matter anymore. But when they were younger, any holiday was just a day on the calendar, and they knew that dad was out doing something really important, which is why he couldn't be there.
Hmm. Yeah, first responder family is almost like you got to accept that you are unique and one of a kind and everything what it goes with it. Some are pleasant and fun and enjoyable, but there are also challenging aspects of being
Yeah.
responders family.
And as we go through the seasons of life with being parents, so we had the younger kids, and then they moved into the teen years and now they're older. But with that comes different things that we're having to adjust on how we're handling things and how we explain things or how we do things. Like, I live in a hurricane prone area like you do,
Yeah.
and they my boys, once they got older, they knew that they had to step up and do what kind of dad could do if he wasn't here. My youngest son can start a generator, he can fix it, he can do just about anything with it,
Mhm.
because for 30 years we've not had him home for hurricane season.
Wow. Yeah, that's just one of many, in a way, losses, for
Yeah.
the family. Yeah. Mm. Yeah. How did you or both of you, or maybe more your husband, how did you navigate through your children's, you know, keeping them safe, right? Because, your experiences are somewhat different than just even my experience. Something came to your mind, you started laughing.
It did. Two things came to my mind when my kids were younger. The I don't know what they're called, the wheelie sneakers with the wheels on the bottom came out, where you could
Ah.
like go roller skating kind of with your sneakers on. And my kids wanted them. My husband went, no, too many broken ankles. Nope, not happening. You can't have them. They begged him and begged him and begged him, and he said no. Too many injuries he's seen.
Mm.
And there's a lot of things like that. They will say, we never had a trampoline because of all the accidents he had seen
Mhm.
from trampolines. And my
Mhm.
kids were always like, but dad, everybody's doing it. And he was like, but everybody's dad's not going to the accident that happens.
Mhm.
They got to the point to where they knew that if dad said no, and if he just said it's because of something I'd seen, they
Mhm.
understood that.
Mhm.
They very much respected that.
Ah.
If when they started driving, for example, he'd be like, don't go in this area. They were like, okay, dad. It's
Mm.
as they've gotten older, if dad speaks and actually says no, they now know that there's a reason behind it. Just like if he actually tells me, hey, Chrissy, I'd really rather you not do ABC, I don't even question it. I go, okay.
Mhm.
And because he doesn't do that.
Mhm.
And I know that it's something he's probably seen or something that he's probably done. I do know as they've gotten older and they've driving, and with technology is amazing, but he will now watch his phone
Mhm.
and check the roads that they're on to see if there's any accidents, to see if there's any trouble, and or even storms coming in the area. I can't tell you how many times I've been driving home from work and be like, there's an accident at X and Z. You need to avoid that area and go this way. And he does the same thing with our daughter. He does the same thing with our son that drives.
Mm.
So he's always looking out for us. I don't know that he knows how to turn that off yet. I
That's
think
what I was thinking about, you know.
I think it's always going to be on. I think it's a dad thing, but it's just
Mhm.
he's always on alert because that's what they're like at the station all the time. So he's slowly getting to the point that he's not constantly, but he is. But it doesn't help that we call him at the same time and we're like, hey, we're on this road. What's the traffic like?
Yes, yes.
We tend to do that too.
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah, I'm just holding it here, you know, for your family, that how you went through different seasons, you know, and stay strong together.
I think one of the hardest things we had to deal with is when our daughter started dating.
Mm,
And
I see.
I think I shared this story at Mom Our Boots. She was dating a gentleman, or a kid, not a gentleman, he wasn't a man yet. And he freaked out because there was a little fire. And he called her, where's your dad? Oh my gosh, where's your dad? Where's your dad?
Mhm.
And um he, through the conversation, he was like, there's a huge fire, your dad's in danger, da, 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 da. And she came crying to me, and it turns out that it was a dumpster fire. So a fire contained in a dumpster about 10 miles outside of his district. So he wouldn't even have been there.
Mhm.
It took a fire truck and a fire extinguisher to put out the fire.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
he freaked out. So we had to do that. We navigating social media is a little difficult right now, because the news, just the other day, the news reported that one of our firefighters got hurt, and our daughter couldn't get in touch with me, couldn't get in touch with my husband.
Oh no.
He
Mhm.
wasn't on duty.
Mhm.
The firefighter was perfectly fine. He was fine and everything. But still, it's one of those that it goes out on media before it hits. Sometimes even the family knows that a first responder was injured. Um, so that's kind of challenging, but that's challenging for everybody. I think it's just a little bit more for us, only because it's a first responder and that hits the news before anything.
Yeah. Yeah, I can imagine the fear when you don't know if
Yeah.
your loved one is safe.
I've been asked many times if I fear a phone call, and I said, no, I never fear a phone call. It's the knock on the door, because a phone call means that he's in the hospital and he's okay.
Mhm. Mhm.
So,
Yeah, yeah, which it takes us also into this other form of mentorship, you know, when you probably had to console, you know, another spouse who lost first
yeah.
responder, loved one. Yeah, you were a small, I had a privilege to get to know your South Carolina community, and everyone knows each other, but also in your
Yes.
little regions, you know people who may be involved in in the accident. Yeah.
Um, our department, right before I lost our first line of duty death, LODD, we lost a fire wife in an accident. Um,
Hmm.
about 2 miles, if that, from her husband's station, and his station responded, and they all knew whose car it was and everything. Um, that was probably one of the hardest things we've ever been through, or as a department, because every guy could place his wife in that car.
Hmm.
And that was challenging. And that's actually when I met my team. It was SC Fest, was during that thing. They that was a challenging time, but it is challenging. I don't want it is an honor for me to hold space with them. I'm there for them to listen, to cry, to if they want to cry, if they want to talk, if they want to just sit there, I'll just sit there with you. I'll sit in silence. Because mentorship is not just helping them navigate it, it's just sometimes being there to listen and to have an unbiased opinion and say, I feel you, I understand, and then how can I help?
Mm,
Um, my Patty, who's the head of our organization,
mhm,
she calls them grief groceries, is what she says. She says it's not saying, hey, if I'm going to the store, can I get you anything? It's, will you be home tomorrow at 4 p.m.? Yes, I will. Okay. I'm going to drop off some groceries for you.
mhm,
It's not saying, what can I get you from the store? It's
mhm,
just going and doing it, making sure that there's meals being fed,
mhm,
making sure the house is,
mhm.
maybe the trash got to the curb or something like that. It's things along those lines.
This is so amazing that you are sharing this. I think that's going to be my highlight, that in these very critical moments when you are helping with someone with acute bereavement, it's not time to ask for permission questions. Can I come tomorrow? You have to be sort of like their angel and say, I will
Mhm.
be here, I'm dropping this with you. Wow,
Yeah.
this is for me like really the information that I will be storing now forever. Just
Well, one of the things we did with a family, or I didn't do it, a colleague did it. The family went through a loss,
yeah.
and they brought a cooler and put the cooler outside and made sure it was a big cooler, like one of the big ones. Put
Mhm.
it outside on the front porch. Made sure it had ice and everything every day, and people would bring meals and just put it in the cooler. They
Oh.
didn't disturb the family. They just put a homemade meal in the cooler and let them know that food was there, and they made sure that it was there at the same time every day. They had lunch, they had dinner.
Mhm.
They might have breakfast, breakfast stuff like left there too, but nobody disturbed the family, but
Mhm.
they still had food there.
Mm.
They made sure their lawn was cut. They made sure their um, trash cans made it to the end of the curb on trash day. Things along those lines, like don't take your trash out, just put it outside the door. Someone will take care of it.
Mhm.
And it seems like something minor, but when you're in the stages of grief, or even not just grief, of recovery and treating and helping someone, that little bit off, it might seem nothing to you, but to them it might be huge.
Mhm.
I don't have to walk all the way down to the trash can, or I don't have to remember that today is Tuesday and it's trash day.
Mhm.
Somebody else is going to help me and take that off my plate right now.
Yeah, my community will take care of me.
Absolutely.
Oh,
Absolutely.
so moved by it. I wish that it's more of it in anywhere we are, anywhere we live.
Hmm.
But thank you for sharing that, pointing it out. It's
Absolutely.
inspiring. We can create, it begins with us, creating that community.
And it doesn't have to be, it's not cookie cutter. It's whatever it needs to be, and it can be personalized. It can be,
Mhm.
however you need to do. It's just, it's being there and taking the step.
Yeah. And it is also in real life of first responder families, one size doesn't fit all. We both are working with um, different family situations, and we may both are talking to spouses, and they may be married, not married. They may be dealing with sometimes the unsafe coping mechanisms that
Absolutely.
responders um, and exercise as a way of coping. And
Mhm.
yeah, so I'm curious, how would you mentor, a spouse that is dealing with substance use or abuse, on the side of the first responder?
Um, Generally, when I speak to a spouse, I have a couple of first questions that I ask before we get into the details of everything. My very first question is, when's the last time you ate a full meal? Um, and then my second question is, when is the last time you got a good night's sleep?
Mm-hmm.
And the reasons I ask those two questions is the first one is sleep. You can't you can't think straight. You can't process your emotions.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to say properly because everyone processes them differently, but you can't truly understand your emotions if you're overly tired,
Mm-hmm.
and you can't um, kind of reset. You're going to constantly be in fight or flight.
Yeah.
So I asked them when they got their first, when's the last time you ate something good and something you want, not just, I'm not talking about a granola bar or a smoothie. When is the last time you had a good meal? And nine times out of 10, they'll tell me it's been about 4 days since they had a good night's sleep and they ate yesterday. And I'm like, okay, so what we're going to do first is we're going to get a good night's sleep so we have a level head, and then we're going to create a plan. Um, I actually just spoke with someone who was dealing with an alcohol issue.
Mm-hmm.
And the first thing I did was asked if they felt safe, because that's paramount. But
Mm-hmm.
also, I asked a little bit about the history. And do you know of anything that started it? Has it always been this way? And I connect them with, um, I see myself as a facilitator. I
Oh,
am a peer counselor, but I'm a facilitator and an advocate. I will facilitate, find you the correct things. If it's out of my scope of expertise, I will find someone who is that expertise and connect you. This lady that I spoke with not that long ago, I connected her to Alcohol Anonymous for families, for the family, the spouses, or the spouses and the children of it. I connected her to that. She didn't know about that. Her spouse was in Alcoholics Anonymous. He was going through the steps and restarting them. I suggested that for her and found her counseling. But then I follow up. I don't just go, okay, here, my hands are washed, I'm done. No, I follow up. I'll follow up after a few days. And things along those lines. I will be honest, that's not my area of expertise, and I would never want to steer someone wrong. So I always, if it's something that I don't think I know how to handle, I facilitate, and I'm just a bridge. And I think I've gone over that before. Um, I see myself as a bridge. I am someone to help you right now, and then I will help you to get to counseling if that's what you choose, or whatever you need. I
yeah.
will help with that. I've been also known to bring chargers to hospital beds because you're at your husband's side and you don't have your phones and you don't have a charger. We've done that. We've brought quarters for vending machines. Now they take phones. So, things have changed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just giving them resources, really.
Mhm.
That's the most important thing. I really appreciate that role, you are playing as a peer support, and that they can call you and you are strong enough to refer them to the resources that are best for them. Yeah.
Absolutely. If I don't know the answer, I will find someone who does, or I will walk with you and we will learn together.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I don't ever want to do anything. And I think that's important for peer counselors, not to overstep their bounds, not to know your limitations and know how much and what you can give.
Mm-hmm.
And that goes back to I'm a big self-care advocate for peers, for professionals, for everyone. I think everyone needs to take time, and firewives too. They need to take time out of the day, find what rejuvenates your soul and centers you. And I think
Absolutely.
that's important.
That's a big mission also for our spouse support groups that we have at FHE Health for our, first responders who are in treatment and their spouses. So, yeah, the self-care is not selfish, it's essential.
Absolutely.
That's our
And I
mission.
love the fact that you guys have this for spouses. This is just amazing.
Mhm.
I was so excited when I learned about this.
Yes, yes. Yeah, we take pride in providing this in real time, for spouses whose loved one are in treatment for trauma. in real time to providing them guidance and support. And most importantly, I even call that group like, you are the community now for 90,
Yeah.
90 minutes. This is not about keeping appearances. It's about to give and receive support. It's at tough times.
And it's where you can be yourself and understood. And these are people who understand
Mhm.
or have a glimpse in what you go through and the struggles of, if there's a bad call and they come home and they're angry and you're going, oh my goodness, they're mad at me, I must have done something wrong. No, it's not you. It's they're processing. They're trying to unpack what they went through. It's not you. But I know, as me personally, it was hard for me not to internalize that and go, I didn't leave the remote in the right spot. I didn't put the mayonnaise back where it needed to be. No, it wasn't that. That's the trauma speaking.
Yeah.
And it's important to know that. And one of the things that I've talked to my husband about, if you've had a particularly hard night,
Mhm.
give me a heads up before you come home.
Mhm.
And when I talk to my husband in the morning, because I talk to him every morning when he's on his way home, first thing I ask him is, did you sleep last night? And that gives me an idea of what my day is going to be like when he comes home. And when the kids were younger, I would know if he didn't sleep, that I would have them watching a movie or doing schoolwork or doing something to where he could walk in the door and not be overwhelmed at first, and give him a few minutes to decompress.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a great counsel. It may work for some listeners if it's the case. It's a good tip, Chrissy.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm curious also if we can move to interesting topic, which always comes up in my spouse groups, and it's like courage to have hard conversations. Would you just kind of briefly, like at least one or two that comes to your mind?
I can think of a couple that come to mind. I think the very first one that we talk about, or that I've talked about with my husband, one of the hardest ones was finances.
Mhm.
And that's because they do so much, they work so hard. It was hard for me to sit there and say, no, you can't go do XYZ because we need to have the money for this, because they work so hard and they don't get paid enough. So I want to give them everything. And but it's also hard for me to sit there. It was also hard for me to say, well, I need new clothing, for example. I need a new shirt or something. And because I would constantly put it above the kid, put the kids above me, put the husband above me. And it would be like, okay, where am I? Um, so that's kind of number one, finances. But finances, as I transition into my husband retiring, we had to have that conversation all over again. And
Mhm.
as various things have changed throughout our his career and our marriage, we've had to have that over and over. It's one of the hardest things to talk about, in my opinion.
Mhm.
And but probably one of the simplest ones that you need to talk about.
Mhm.
The second thing that I would have to say is trust. It's a very hard conversation nowadays. Obviously, you trust each other, but there's a couple things you need to trust in. When I speak to spouses, with the department and with your spouse, first you need to trust them, trust their training. They train so much that they train so it's second nature, so they don't have to think about it. So when they're putting on the bunk gear, for example, you had to put on bunk gear for the first time
Mhm.
at Mile in Our Boots. That's not easy. They can do it in less than 30 seconds and be on a truck and out the bay.
Mhm.
So, but they train and train and train, so it's just second nature. So they're not thinking about it. An example I use is when I was learning to do infant CPR. I had an infant at home. I was crying while I was doing it. And my instructor, who happened to be one of the firefighters,
Mhm.
made me keep doing it until I stopped crying. He said, you're doing this so you stop thinking about it and you just do it, and it becomes second nature. So we have to trust that, not only in our husband's training or our wives, but we have to trust in their partners' training and their team's training. And everyone that goes up higher and higher in the ranks, they've got many of years of training. So those days that I was worried about Dave, I had to remember he had been fighting fires for 30 something years. He knows what he's doing. He's not going to get in over his head.
Mhm.
Um, but then there's that other side that is kind of like a taboo topic because Hollywood likes to portray the firefighters and all those as the firehouses being one big like club where everyone's, doing stuff they're not supposed to do. But you need to trust your partner. You need to trust that they, you need to trust them. It's a question that people who are outside the community don't understand. They don't understand how I can trust my husband when he's working with women, or how women don't their husbands don't trust them. You need to be able to trust. They're not there for that. They're there just to you know do their job. And yes, they share a big room, but it's a room with 10 beds, and they each have their own private little semi-private space. So trust is important. um and the last one I think is one that I never wanted to talk about, and that's what to do if something happens.
Mhm.
I call it before the knock. You got to figure out what you're going to do before the knock comes on your door. Figure out what the wishes are and what they would like done, what you would like done. Those are things that are hard to talk about, but they need to be done. I can honestly say in 30 years, I have not fully had that conversation because I've had that conversation, but I'm not allowed. It was a momentary conversation, put in a file and put away. So it's not in my forefront. It's in the back of my head, but it's not. I don't dwell on it, but it's
Right.
something that needs to be said.
And I think just acknowledging these hard topics and moving towards communicating them, and just help with not ruminating or obsessing about them. So I think that's a great message about just not avoiding and just try again, if it doesn't go well. But those
Yeah.
conversations can be also a points of connection.
And don't just have them once. You're going to have them multiple times.
Yeah.
Um, I tell my children the same thing. I've told them since they were old enough to understand what dad did and the risks that he took, that you've got to trust in his training. You've got to trust him. He knows what he's doing. He, he knows what he's doing. He's been doing it since he was 14 years old. So almost 40 years now. He's been fighting fires, and he knows what he's doing.
Yeah, so a lot of reassurance. Yeah.
And don't watch the news the night your husband's on duty. That's my other word of advice. Don't watch the news the night your husband's on duty.
Yeah. It also leads me to zoom into on onto you and ask about you, how you are navigating to holding yourself, as at front line, or and your identity as Chrissy.
For many years, I didn't do that. Um, I didn't. I was a fire wife. I was a homeschooling mom. I was a Girl Scout leader. I was everything. But over the years, as I've joined the team, as I've furthered my education, I have learned the importance of self care and remembering not to compare myself to others, not just other fire spouses, but even my stress to David's stress. We both stress, but
Mhm.
one stress is not more necessarily better than the other, or more or worse than the other. His stress is different than my stress, but it doesn't invalidate my stress. And I think that was the most important thing I had to learn, was not to invalidate myself
Mhm.
because I thought his stress was worse than me. Not to hold it all in, to acknowledge, to express, to communicate when I was frustrated, and not be like, well, I'm not going to tell him ABC because he's coming home and he had a bad shift last night.
Mhm.
And meanwhile, I had been up all night because I had three sick kids.
Mhm.
It's a partnership, and I think when we don't share that, it actually makes them feel disengaged and disconnected from the family. That I'm not saying share, you know, the minute they walk in the door, but you have to include him in what happens in the house and not exclude them,
Yeah.
because that leads to bigger problems.
Mhm.
But I had to not compare my stress to his stress. I had done that many times. And there was someone who jokingly said, what kind of stress does a first responder have when their wife is graduating and taking a senior thesis class with a million pages to read? And I said, he has a different kind of stress because it's his wife and not himself.
Mhm.
And but it made me think that, that's a lot of thing that I find that spouses do, is that we tend to compare our stress and compare it to what the first responders trauma would be, and they're nothing alike.
Mhm.
And that's okay, they're not supposed to be alike.
Yeah.
um Even if two first responders go on a call together, their responses aren't going to be the same. The
Mhm.
way they internalize it is not going to be the same, because they have different backgrounds, they have different histories, and they have different exposure to the same thing. So I have a friend who is a army wife, and we constantly I talked to her one day and I said, I don't know how you do it. Your husband's on the other side of the world right now. How do you do it? She goes, how do you do it? Your husband runs into a burning building. And I go, yeah, but that's just his job. And he goes, well, she goes, that's just my husband's job. So, it's one of those that it's a different kind of stress.
Mhm.
And what we see as normal, other people won't. But that's okay, because it's not their normal, it's our normal. So I would say to keep yourself. I find out what grounds me. That's walking in the woods for me, or going to the beach. Anything with nature. I love it, especially if I can take my dog with me. Um, Reading. I love to read. I love to escape a little bit and do that. And then I'm teaching myself some of my grandma's like hobbies, like cross stitch and all that kind of stuff. So I'm trying to find ways to still define myself and not just be follow some hobbies and things like that.
Oh, beautifully said, Chrissy.
Thank
And
you.
uh, as we are landing here together, I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you for your warm, very informative message, a lived experience message. And I really would love to have you for another conversation. What is it like to be, with your husband in retirement after a long first responder's career?
Yeah, he
I have-
retires on Monday after 32 years.
wow. And can I have your word that you will be coming back?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Anytime. I'd love to come back. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a blast.
Yes, beautiful. Thank you. Listeners, let's if this resonated with you, you can share with others. And I'm looking forward to connect with you all next month. Thank you for tuning in. The First Responder Families podcast is sponsored by Shadowproof at FHE Health, a specialized treatment program for first responders with mental health and/or substance use issues. For more information about our show and our services, check out FHEHealth.com. The podcast website also has a place where you can share your ideas or questions for future shows. If you are struggling, we want to help. Feel free to call us at 844-714-3403 or visit FHEHealth.com. We look forward to having you join us for our podcast next month. Until then, take care.